You know what the problem is with running a medical facility on the edge of the 7th sector. Everything. Absolutely everything. But the biggest problem, the one that keeps me up during my rest cycles, is when something completely impossible happens, and you have to figure out how to explain it to your superiors without sounding like you have been inhaling too much xenon from the air recyclers. My name is Vix. Dr. Vix, if we are being formal, which we are not, because formality died somewhere around the 3rd day of this nightmare. I am a Kaltorian, which means I have 4 arms, excellent spatial reasoning, and absolutely zero patience for things that defy the fundamental laws of biology. I run the medical wing of Station Outpost 73, a dumping ground for diplomatic incidents, quarantine cases, and the occasional idiot who thought picking a fight with a Grexian was a good idea. It was a Tuesday. Well, not really a Tuesday, because we do not use Earth's calendar system, but if we did, it would have been a Tuesday. That is when they brought him in. The human. Let me set the scene for you, because this is important. The cargo hauler designation Manta 6 had responded to a distress beacon near the frontier rim. They found a small exploration vessel, basically a tin can with an engine, floating dead in space. 1 life sign. 1 human. Barely alive. They hauled him in, put him in stasis, and shipped him to us because, apparently, we are the lucky ones who get to deal with humanity's propensity for nearly dying in stupid ways. Dr. Vix. My assistant Krell came scuttling into my office on his 6 legs, his carapace clicking with each step. The human patient from the Manta 6. He is being moved to Bay 7. Wonderful, I said, not looking up from my datapad. Another human. What is it this time? Radiation poisoning? Decompression injuries? Did he try to pet something with 17 rows of teeth? Coma, Grell said, his mandibles twitching. Severe neural trauma. They are saying he has been unconscious for at least 4 weeks, maybe longer. I sighed. Humans. Fragile, reckless, and apparently incapable of staying away from dangerous situations. Prep the neural scanner. Let us see what we are working with. When I walked into Bay 7, I expected the usual scene. A patient on life support, tubes and wires everywhere, machines doing the work that the body could not, and yes, that was exactly what I saw. But there was something else, something that made me stop in my tracks and stare. The human, a male specimen designated as Marcus Vale according to his identification chip, was lying on the medical bed. Standard procedure. But his physique, his muscle definition, it was wrong. All wrong. Krell, I said slowly, how long did the report say he has been in a coma? 4 weeks minimum. Possibly 6. And he was alone on that vessel. No other crew? Correct, doctor. I walked closer, my forearms crossed in various states of disbelief. Marcus Vale was built like he spent every waking hour in a training facility. His arms, his chest, his legs, they were all showing significant muscle development. Not the kind you get from occasional exercise, the kind you get from dedicated, intense, daily training. Pull up his medical scans from when he was first recovered, I ordered. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the initial scans taken by the Manta 6 crew.
I compared them to the current readings.
Then I compared them again because my brain was refusing to accept what my eyes were seeing. This is impossible, I muttered. What is impossible, doctor? Krell asked, his voice tinged with concern. His muscle mass. It has increased by at least 8% since he was first recovered. Perhaps the initial scans were incorrect? The Manta 6 uses standard medical equipment. Their scans are reliable. I zoomed in on the comparative analysis. Look at this. His deltoids, his quadriceps, his core muscles. All of them showing increased density and size. Caro. He is in a coma. His body should be atrophying, not building muscle. That does violate several biological principles, Grell agreed, which was his polite way of saying I was not crazy. Several? I laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the medical bay. It violates all of them. When a being is unconscious for extended periods, muscle mass decreases. It is called atrophy. It is basic biology. It happens to every species we know, but this human, he is doing the opposite. I ran a full diagnostic scan, checking every system, every parameter. Brain activity showed deep coma state. Neural patterns were minimal, just enough to keep basic autonomic functions running. respiratory system, being assisted, cardiovascular system, weak but stable. Everything pointed to a patient who should be wasting away. Except he was not. Monitor him continuously. I told Krell I want scans every 6 hours. If anything changes, anything at all, notify me immediately. Understood, doctor. I went back to my office, but I could not focus on anything else. The image of that human lying unconscious while his body somehow defied physics kept playing in my mind. I pulled up every medical file I had on human biology. There was plenty to read, because humans were relatively new to the galactic community, and their biology was, to put it mildly, weird. They could survive with significant portions of their organs removed. They could adapt to extreme environments. Their immune systems were aggressive to the point of being hostile. They had something called an appendix that served no purpose except to occasionally try to kill them. And do not even get me started on their wisdom teeth. But nowhere in any of the literature did it mention anything about unconscious muscle growth. The next morning, my second shift, if you want to be technical, Krell was waiting for me outside Bay 7. His body language, the way his legs were positioned, told me everything I needed to know. It happened again, I said. Not a question, a statement. Yes, doctor. The 6-hour scan shows another increase, small but measurable. I stormed into the bay and pulled up the latest scan. There it was, clear as the void of space. His muscle mass had increased another 2% in 6 hours. This is insane, I said. This is medically, scientifically, physically insane. Should we contact the Galactic Medical Council? Krell asked. And tell them what? That we have a human who is somehow working out while unconscious? They will think we contaminated the samples, or that our equipment is malfunctioning, or that I have finally lost my mind. I paced around the medical bed, studying Marcus Vale from every angle. He looked peaceful, if you ignored all the medical equipment keeping him alive. His face was relaxed, his breathing steady and assisted. Nothing about him suggested anything unusual, except for the muscles. Those damned, impossible muscles. Run a cellular analysis, I ordered. I want to know what is happening at the microscopic level. The results came back an hour later, and they made everything worse. His muscle cells were showing increased protein synthesis. His body was producing growth factors. His cellular repair mechanisms were not just active, they were hyperactive. It was like his body was in the middle of an intense training program, complete with recovery periods and muscle building. How? I asked the empty air. Because neither Krell nor the machines had answers. How is this possible? That is when things got really interesting. And by interesting, I mean terrifying. I was reviewing the cellular data when I noticed something odd in the neural scans. The brain activity was minimal, yes, but it was not random. There were patterns, specific patterns in the motor cortex, the part of the brain responsible for controlling movement. Krell, pull up the brain activity logs for the past 24 hours. He did, and I watched the patterns repeat. Every few hours, there would be a spike in the motor cortex. Small, barely noticeable, but definitely there. And each spike corresponded with subtle muscle contractions that the medical equipment had been recording but dismissing as involuntary spasms. He is not just lying there, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. His brain is firing signals to his muscles. But doctor, he is in a coma. How can he be consciously controlling his muscles? He cannot. Not consciously. I pulled up a chair and sat down because my legs suddenly felt unstable. But what if it is not conscious? What if his subconscious is doing it? I do not understand. Humans have something called muscle memory. When they repeat a physical action enough times, their bodies can perform it without conscious thought. What if, and I know this sounds absurd, but what if his brain is running some kind of automatic training program while he is unconscious? Krell's mandibles clicked in what I had learned was his version of skepticism. That would suggest his subconscious mind has independent control over his muscular system. Yes, it would. That is impossible. I know, but it is happening. I know. I spent the next 3 days, and I do mean 3 full rotation cycles, monitoring Marcus Vale. I watched as his brain sent signals to different muscle groups. I watched as those muscles contracted, held, released. I watched as his body, unconscious and unaware, went through what could only be described as a workout routine. The patterns were consistent. His brain would activate the muscles in his arms, causing micro-contractions that would last for several minutes. In his legs, in his core. Rest period. Repeat. It was methodical, systematic, and completely unconscious. This is the most fascinating and disturbing thing I have ever seen, I told Krell on the fourth day. And I once treated a Vespian who had accidentally swallowed a live plasma eel. What should we do, doctor? I have no idea. Medically, he is stable. His coma is deep, but not deepening. His vital signs are good. Better than good, actually. His cardiovascular health is improving. But I have no explanation for any of this that would not make me sound like I am hallucinating. That is when the situation went from bizarre to potentially dangerous. I was in my office, trying to draft a report that would not get me committed to a psychiatric facility, when Krell burst in. Not walked, not scuttled, burst. Doctor! The human, he is moving. I practically flew to Bay 7. Marcus Vale was still unconscious, still on life support, but his body was convulsing. Not seizing, not spasming, convulsing with purpose. His arms were flexing, his legs were tensing, his entire body was engaged in what looked like an intense, full-body workout. Vital signs? I barked, heart rate elevated but stable, blood pressure rising but within safe limits, brain activity is spiking. I watched the neural scanner, my hearts, all three of them pounding in my chest. The motor cortex was lighting up like a supernova. Signals were firing to every major muscle group. His body was responding, contracting, flexing, pushing against nothing. He is doing a high-intensity training session, I said, my voice filled with disbelief. While unconscious, while in a coma, he is somehow running a complete workout program in his sleep. The episode lasted for approximately 11 minutes. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Marcus Vale's body relaxed, his brain activity dropped back to baseline coma levels, and his vital signs normalized. I stood there, all four of my arms hanging uselessly at my sides, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Krell, I said, I need to contact someone who specializes in human neurology. Because I am completely, utterly, and profoundly out of my depth. I will start compiling a list, doctor. Make it a short list. And make sure they are not the type to have me investigated for data fabrication. Over the next few days, while I waited for responses from various specialists across the galaxy, the pattern continued. Marcus Vale would have his intense training episodes, followed by rest periods. His muscle mass continued to increase. His body fat percentage decreased. He was, by every measurable metric, getting stronger. I documented everything. I took scans, recorded data, analyzed tissue samples. I even set up a continuous video feed, because I knew that without visual proof nobody would believe me. On the 7th day I received a response from a human doctor named Lisa Feng. She worked at a research facility on New Terra and specialized in neurology and sports medicine. Her message was short, professional, and deeply skeptical. Dr. Vix, I have reviewed the data you sent. If this is a prank, it is elaborate, but unconvincing. If this is real, I need to see this patient immediately. I can be at your station in 5 days. Please confirm this is legitimate before I rearrange my entire schedule. I sent her reply with additional scans, video footage, and a personal note that said, I wish this was a prank. Please hurry. I am losing my mind. 4 days later, because she apparently decided to take a faster ship, Dr. Lisa Feng arrived at Station Outpost 73. She was a small woman by human standards, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She walked into Bay 7, looked at Marcus Vale, looked at the data displays, and then looked at me. Holy hell, she said, which I had learned was a human expression of extreme surprise. It is real. Yes, I said, it is very real, and I have no idea how to explain it. She spent the next 6 hours examining Marcus Vale. She ran her own tests, compared them to mine, and sat in silence for long periods just watching the monitors. Finally, she turned to me, and I saw something in her expression that made my scales itch. I have a theory, she said. You are not going to like it. At this point, Dr. Feng, I will accept any theory that does not involve supernatural intervention. She smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who has just realized something impossible is actually happening. Marcus Vale was a soldier. According to his records, he served in the Frontier Corps, Special Operations, The kind of soldiers who spend years, sometimes decades, training their bodies and minds to function under extreme conditions. I am aware humans have military forces, I said carefully. What you might not be aware of is how intense that training is. These soldiers do not just exercise, they condition themselves. They build neural pathways. They train until every movement, every action is automatic. Muscle memory on steroids, if you will excuse the pun. I understand the concept of trained responses. Now imagine this. She gestured to Marcus Vale. He has been training for, let us say, 20 years, every day, multiple times a day. His brain has been reinforcing the same neural pathways for 2 decades. Those pathways are carved deep into his neural structure. I felt a sinking sensation in my lower stomach. You are suggesting that his training is so ingrained that his brain continues to execute it even while he is unconscious. Exactly. His conscious mind is offline. But his subconscious, the deep programming that controls automatic functions, it is still running. And it is running his training program.
That is horrifying.
That is humanity, she said with a shrug. We are very good at taking things too far, but Dr. Feng, this goes beyond simple muscle memory. His body is actually building muscle. It is undergoing physiological changes that requires resources, energy, protein synthesis. How is his body managing that while in a coma? She walked over to the nutrient feed connected to Marcus Vale's IV. What are you feeding him? Standard coma patient nutrition. Adjusted for human metabolism. Increase the protein content by 40%. Add branched-chain amino acids. Boost the caloric intake by 25%. Why would I do that? Because his body is demanding it. Look at his blood chemistry. His protein levels are low. His body is cannibalizing what it needs from available sources. If you give him the resources, his body will use them more efficiently. I was skeptical, but I made the adjustments. Within 24 hours, the changes were obvious. Marcus Vale's recovery improved. His muscle synthesis became more efficient. His body was responding as if someone had just optimized the fuel for a machine. This is insane, I said for what must have been the 100th time. This is humanity, Dr. Feng repeated. We are the species that looked at the concept of sensible biological limitations and said, no thank you. We are stubborn to the point of stupidity. We push our bodies until they break, and then we figure out how to make them stronger, and apparently we can even do it while unconscious. She stayed for 3 more days, studying Marcus Vale, helping me document everything. On her last day, she pulled me aside. Dr. Vix, I need to be honest with you. This case is going to change everything we understand about human neurology and physiology. This is going to be studied for decades, maybe centuries. I just want to understand why it is happening. Because humans are ridiculous, she said simply. Because somewhere in our evolutionary history, we decided that giving up was not an option, even when unconscious. Even when every rational biological imperative says to conserve energy and wait for rescue. This man's body is still fighting, still training, still preparing for whatever comes next. Will he wake up? She looked at Marcus Vale, her expression unreadable. I do not know. His brain trauma is severe. But if I have learned anything from this, it is that underestimating human resilience is a mistake. If anyone can fight their way out of a coma while somehow getting stronger, it would be someone like him. After she left, I continued monitoring Marcus Vale. The episodes continued. The muscle growth continued. And I wrote my report, knowing that most of the medical community would think I had lost my mind. But I had the data, I had the proof. I had video evidence of a human lying in a coma running an unconscious training program that defied every known principle of biology. Welcome to dealing with humanity, I thought, where the impossible is just another Tuesday. And this was only the beginning. 3 weeks. That is how long Marcus Vale had been a permanent resident of Base 7. 3 weeks of watching a man in a coma somehow transform his body into what could only be described as a walking advertisement for extreme fitness. 3 weeks of my sanity slowly dissolving like sugar in acid. The station commander, a Pritrian named Gorath, called me to his office on day 22. Gorath was large, even by Pritrian standards, with scales that shimmered purple under the station lights. He did not look happy. Then again, Pritrians rarely did. Dr. Vix, he rumbled, his voice like rocks grinding together. "I have been receiving reports, concerning reports, about the human patient." "Ah," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You have heard about the impossible muscle growth while in a coma situation. I have heard that you are claiming a patient is exercising while unconscious. I have also heard that you requested an increase in his nutritional intake by 40%. Do you understand how expensive that is? Commander, I sent you the scans, the data, the video footage. I saw them." He leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. "I also saw similar footage once in a documentary about falsified medical claims. Dr. Vix, I respect your work. You run an efficient medical wing, but this stretches credibility." I felt my temperature rising, which for a Cultorian meant my skin was probably turning a lovely shade of angry orange. "Commander, with all due respect, which is currently very little, I have documented everything. Dr. Lisa Feng, a human specialist, came here and confirmed my findings. This is real." "Then explain it to me." "In simple terms, how can a being in a coma build muscle? I cannot explain it. I can only document what is happening. His brain is running an automatic training program. His body is responding. The laws of biology as we understand them are being violated. But it is happening, whether we can explain it or not." Gorath stared at me for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. "Fine. Continue your observations. But if this turns out to be some elaborate hoax, Doctor, you will be explaining it to the Galactic Medical Board personally." "Understood, Commander." I left his office feeling vindicated and frustrated in equal measure. Nobody wanted to believe what was happening because it was too strange, too impossible. But I had stopped caring about possible and impossible. I cared about keeping my patient alive and figuring out what was happening inside his unconscious mind. That evening, station time, Krell found me in the observation room adjacent to Bay 7. I had taken to spending my off hours there, watching Marcus Vale through the transparent wall, trying to understand the mystery lying on that medical bed. "Doctor, we have a situation," Krell said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Another patient in Bay 3, the Threxian merchant with the compound fracture. He is asking questions about the human." "What kind of questions?" "He wants to know why the human receives special nutritional supplements. He is claiming discrimination in medical treatment." I closed my eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. "Tell him that each patient receives treatment appropriate to their specific medical needs. The human has unique metabolic requirements." I explained that, Doctor. "He is not satisfied. He says he wants to file a formal complaint." "Of course he does." I stood up, all 4 arms stretching in irritation, because dealing with one biological impossibility was not enough. Now I need to manage patient relations too. I went to Bay 3 and had a very long, very tedious conversation with Vex, the Threxian merchant. He was convinced I was showing favoritism to the human patient. I explained in excruciating detail that Marcus Vale's body was undergoing unprecedented metabolic activity that required additional nutrition. Vex listened, nodded, and then accused me of making up science to justify discrimination. Some days I truly hated my job. By week 4, something changed. Marcus Vale's episodes became more intense. The muscle contractions were stronger, more coordinated. It was no longer just individual muscle groups firing. His entire body was moving through complex sequences. I watched one episode where his arms moved in patterns that looked suspiciously like combat techniques. Punches, blocks, defensive maneuvers, all executed with precision, all while completely unconscious. "Krell, are you seeing this?" I asked during one particularly intense episode. "Yes, Doctor. It appears to be some form of fighting technique. His brain is not just training his muscles, it is running combat simulations. That is deeply unsettling. That is humanity." I contacted Dr. Feng again. She responded within hours, and we set up a video communication link. Her face appeared on my screen, and I could see she was in the middle of her own night cycle based on the darkness visible through the window behind her. "Dr. Vix, good to hear from you. How is our patient?" "Evolving," I said. "His training episodes have become more complex. He is executing what appear to be fighting techniques, full sequences, perfectly executed." Her eyes widened. "Send me the footage." I transmitted the latest recordings. I watched her face as she studied them, saw her expression shift from curiosity to something that looked like concern mixed with awe. "That is advanced close-quarters combat training," she said finally. "Frontier Corps standard. Takes years to learn those techniques, decades to perfect them. And he is running through them like a practice drill. Dr. Feng, I need to ask you something. Is there any danger? To him, to the staff, to anyone? You mean if he wakes up?" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, thinking, Marcus Vale is a trained soldier. If he wakes up suddenly, disoriented, his training might kick in before his conscious mind catches up. He could perceive threats where none exist. You should take precautions. What kind of precautions? Keep security nearby, make sure nobody approaches him suddenly. If he starts to wake up, try to communicate calmly, clearly. Let him know where he is, that he is safe. Do not restrain him unless absolutely necessary, because that will trigger his defensive responses. Wonderful. So we are potentially dealing with a highly trained combatant who might wake up swinging. Essentially, yes. Humanity really does keep life interesting. We try our best, Doctor. I implemented security protocols. 2 guards stationed outside Base 7 at all times. Staff instructed to maintain distance unless absolutely necessary for medical care. An alarm system connected directly to my personal communicator in case of any sudden changes in his condition. The other medical staff thought I was overreacting. Krella supported me, but even he seemed uncertain. The guards, both Threxians built like armored vehicles, treated the assignment like babysitting duty. Then came day 31. I was reviewing supply requisitions in my office when the alarm screamed, not the soft chime that indicated a minor issue, the full, blaring, station-wide emergency alarm. My communicator exploded with noise. "Dr. Vix, Base 7. The human." I ran. I actually ran, which I had not done since my academy days. I burst into Base 7 to find organized chaos. The guards were there, weapons drawn but not aimed. Krell was by the medical monitors, his carapace practically vibrating with stress, and Marcus Vale was sitting up. His eyes were open, darting around the room with the sharp focus of someone assessing threats. The IV lines had been pulled out. The monitoring equipment was beeping in distress, and he was tense, coiled, ready to move. "Nobody move," I said, keeping my voice calm and level. "Everyone stay exactly where you are." Marcus Vale's eyes locked onto me. 4 arms, scaled skin, definitely not human. I could see his mind processing, calculating, his muscles tense. "Marcus Vale," I said slowly, clearly, "my name is Dr. Vix. You are on Station Outpost 73. You are safe. You were injured. You have been in a coma for 31 days. You are in a medical facility. Nobody here is a threat." His eyes narrowed. His jaw clenched. I could see the combat training warring with rational thought in his expression. "You responded to a distress beacon," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "Your ship was damaged. You suffered severe neural trauma. We have been treating you. You are safe." "Where?" His voice was rough, unused. "Where am I?" "Station Outpost 73. 7th Sector, Medical Wing. You are safe." He looked down at his arms, seemed to notice the muscle definition, the changes in his body. Confusion flickered across his face. "How long?" 31 days. 31. He repeated it like he was testing the words. "I have been unconscious for 31 days. "Yes." He tried to stand. His legs shook, but they held. The guards tensed. I held up 2 of my hands in a calming gesture. "Marcus, you should not be standing. You have been in a coma. Your body needs time to adjust." "My body feels fine." He looked at his arms again, flexed them experimentally. "Better than fine. What happened to me?" How do you explain to someone that they spent a month unconsciously training while in a coma? How do you make that sound reasonable? "That," I said carefully, "is a very long and very strange story. Over the next 2 hours, after we convinced Marcus Vale to sit down, after we reconnected some monitoring equipment, after the guards relaxed enough to lower their weapons, I explained everything. I showed him the scans, the data, the footage of his unconscious training episodes. I watched his face as he processed information that should have been impossible. "So you are telling me," he said slowly, "that while I was in a coma, My brain just decided to keep running training drills. That is the simplified version, yes. And I gained muscle mass while unconscious. Approximately 18% increase in overall muscle mass. He looked at his arms again, turned them over, examining them like they belonged to someone else. That is insane. I have been saying that for 31 days. But it happened.
Yes.
He laughed. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full, genuine laughter. Of course it did. Of course my body could not just rest like a normal person's, had to keep training, even while unconscious. You do not seem surprised, I observed. Doc, I have been training since I was 16 years old. Every day, multiple times a day. Sometimes in my sleep, apparently literally in my sleep now. He shook his head. My drill instructor used to say that training never stops. Yes, he was more right than he knew. Your physiology is remarkable, I said, and deeply unsettling. Welcome to humanity. He tried to stand again, this time more successfully. I need to contact my unit. They are probably wondering what happened to me. Marcus, you should rest. Your body has been through significant trauma. Doc, with respect, my body apparently spent the last month working out. I think it had enough rest. I wanted to argue. Every medical instinct I had screamed that he should be bedridden, recovering, taking things slowly. But he was standing there looking healthier than most patients who had been conscious and mobile for their entire stay. At least let me run a full diagnostic, I said. Make sure everything is functioning properly. Fine. But make it quick. The diagnostic took 3 hours. I tested everything: neural function, cardiovascular health, muscular coordination, reflexes, cognitive ability. Every single test came back not just normal but exceptional. Marcus Vale was, by every measurable standard, in the best physical condition of his life. This is medically impossible, I told him as I reviewed the final results. Yeah, you mentioned that several times. No, you do not understand. You should need weeks, possibly months of physical therapy. You should have muscle weakness, coordination issues, cognitive difficulties. You should barely be able to walk, let alone stand without assistance. But I can walk. I can stand. I feel fine. That is my point. You should not feel fine, but you do. Your body somehow maintained and improved itself during a coma. You have invalidated several fundamental principles of medical science. He grinned. Sorry about that, Doc. Over the next few days I kept Marcus Vale under observation, much to his annoyance. He wanted to leave, to get back to his unit, to resume his life. I insisted on monitoring him for any delayed effects, any complications that might arise from his unusual situation. During that time, word spread through the station about the human who trained while in a coma. Medical staff from other departments found excuses to walk past Bay 7. Commander Gorath visited twice, the second time bringing what I suspected was an apology, though he never actually said the words. Other patients asked questions. Vex, the Threxian merchant who had complained about discrimination, requested a transfer to a different medical facility. I approved it immediately. On day 35, Dr. Feng contacted me again. This time she was not alone. There were 3 other humans with her, all wearing official-looking uniforms. Dr. Vix, I am calling to inform you that Marcus Vale's case has been brought to the attention of military medical research. They want to study what happened, with your permission and his, of course. They want to study him and your findings. This could revolutionize our understanding of human neurology, muscle physiology, and unconscious capability. This could change everything. I looked over at Marcus, who was doing push-ups in the corner of Bay 7 despite my repeated requests that he stop. He saw me watching and shrugged. Your people want to study this? I asked. Very much so. Fine. But I maintain full medical oversight, and I want copies of all research findings. Agreed. Marcus stopped his push-ups and walked over. They want to study me, don't they? Yes. Figures. He sighed. All right, but I have conditions. What conditions? Dr. Feng asked. I get to go back to active duty. No desk job, no permanent medical leave. I train, I work, I stay operational, and someone needs to explain to my commanding officer why I've been unconscious for over a month. The military officials conferred. Then one of them, a stern-looking woman with gray hair, nodded. Acceptable. Lieutenant Vale, you will report for duty after completing standard post-trauma evaluation. Your extended absence has already been explained and excused. Good enough. They disconnected, and I turned to Marcus. You are really going back to being a soldier after everything that happened? Doc, it is what I do. What I am. Apparently, even my unconscious mind agrees. You humans are exhausting. Yeah, we get that a lot. On day 37, I cleared Marcus Vale for discharge. He was healthy, functional, and frankly tired of being in the medical bay. I provided him with detailed instructions for follow-up care, most of which I knew he would probably ignore. Dr. Vicks, he said as he prepared to leave, thank you for everything, for figuring out what was happening, for keeping me alive, for not giving up even when nothing made sense. It is my job, I said. It is more than that. You could have just written me off as a weird anomaly, but you did not. You documented everything. You brought in specialists. You treated me like a person, not just a medical mystery. I felt something warm in my chest, which for a Cultorian indicated emotional response. You are welcome, Marcus Vale. He held out his hand, a human gesture I had learned meant friendship and respect. I extended one of my hands and shook his. His grip was firm, confident. If you are ever near the frontier rim, look me up, he said. I owe you a drink. I will hold you to that. He left, walking out of Bay 7 with steady steps, looking like he had never spent a single day unconscious. I watched him go, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that he was healthy, sadness that the most interesting medical case of my career was over. Krell scuttled up beside me. An unusual patient, Doctor. That is an understatement. Do you think we will ever understand how it happened? Probably not. At least, not fully. But we documented it. We proved it happened. That is enough. The medical wing returned to normal over the following days. New patients arrived, standard cases that made sense and followed the rules of biology. I wrote my final report on Marcus Vale, a document that ran to 273 pages and included enough data to make any researcher weep with joy. Commander Gorath approved the report without comment, which I took as an admission that I had been right all along. The station gossip moved on to other topics. Life continued. But I kept the video files, every scan, every recording, every piece of data, because someday someone would ask if this really happened. If a human really trained while in a coma, if biology could really be bent that far by sheer unconscious determination, and I would have proof. 3 months later I received a message. It was from Marcus Vale, marked as personal correspondence. I opened it, curious. Dr. Vicks, just wanted to let you know I passed all my post-trauma evaluations with flying colors. The military doctors are still arguing about my case. Some think you faked the data. Others think it is the most significant discovery in decades. I think it is just funny. Back on active duty now. Feels good. Also wanted to tell you something weird. I have been having dreams. Not normal dreams. Training dreams. I am in the dream, running drills, practicing techniques. When I wake up, I remember them perfectly. My performance scores have improved. I think whatever happened while I was in the coma, it changed something. Made the connection between my conscious and unconscious minds stronger. Is that possible? Anyway, thanks again. Stay safe out there. Marcus. I sat back in my chair and stared at the message for a long time. Changed the connection between conscious and unconscious mind. Made it stronger. The implications were staggering. Krell, I called out. Yes, Doctor. Remind me never to underestimate human biology again. I will make a note of it, Doctor. I closed the message and went back to work. Just another day in the medical wing of Station Outpost 73. Just another impossible story in the ongoing saga of humanity's refusal to follow any reasonable biological rules. And you know what? I would not have it any other way. Because boring was overrated. And humans, impossible, frustrating, ridiculous humans. They made every day interesting, even when they were unconscious. Especially when they were unconscious. The end, or maybe just the beginning. Because with humans, you never really knew where the story would go next. And honestly, that was the best part.